You're live.
It is 6:16. We can call the meeting to order and do roll call. So Commissioner Kyle Early, Commissioner Lonnie Garrett Ferguson, President, Commissioner Kate Kennedy,
Present.
Commissioner Gregory Reeves,
Present.
Commissioner Sharina Zayed.
Present.
So do we want to select a chair tonight? I know it's been a while since we had our last meeting. I know Kyle's still back here. Do we want to do that now or do we want to table it?
We
Any
can.
thoughts?
I feel like we should move forward with selecting someone, but I would like Kyle to be here. I wonder, could we see if he can?
He can
I can text Kyle and see if he's coming.
Yeah.
I did. I texted him.
Okay.
And if he's on his way, then maybe we can move it down in the agenda.
And even if he just wants to call in, he can call in on the.
I don't think he could vote.
But he can't vote if he's not here, right?
He could, so technically under the Cleveland ordinance, he can use the phone and be part of the meeting, including voting.
Oh.
Now, the state says Cleveland is not in line, so could it be controversial? Yes, but for this, I don't know. You know, it's in conflict with the state law.
Let's see if he's coming.
So maybe we should go on to old business and maybe move this. Can we just move this
Mhm.
on the agenda?
Yeah, we can move it from towards the end.
Okay.
So old business, the CPC annual survey on community police interactions. I know we had some conversations about this at the previous meeting. But I don't know what are people feeling like how we should do moving forward as far as purchasing software or reaching out to folks to actually get the survey done or selecting a time frame. I think that's the way, because I know other committees are waiting for us to do the survey.
Right. So I had spoke to someone in the community, and she said that she knew people that may be willing to volunteer. People who, some of them work in other states, but they work for firms that could help us, potentially on a volunteer basis to figure out how to get those surveys out. So I was thinking that maybe we can kind of just do further research to see if those organizations are willing to aid or assist. Yeah, to do pro bono work, volunteer, before we dip into the budget.
That makes sense. I know, so you can ask BW, and I can ask Shaw High School as well. Ooh, Cleveland State.
Cool.
No, I'm thinking Cleveland State. I can ask Cleveland State, and we get do you know the name of the firm?
I cannot remember. I'm sorry. I'm worthless without a notepad. But
Wasn't there a concern about preferential treatment with the different firms providing polling advice? So that's what I recall from our last meeting. So
I thought as we were paying it, but not if we're asking professors if we could do it, if they could help us as part of a service learning project. 'Cause,
Right.
you know,
Okay.
you know,
Yeah, I get what you're
Cleveland State, they have both of the two institutions that does service learning.
Mhm.
So I was gonna ask Dean Anglin if it could just be a course thing. I was thinking maybe something similar to
and I could do it with, so if we wanted to go the free route, then I could do it with my students in the fall semester and for my sociological research class. It's a 400 level class, so they're all seniors. And then our BW polling staff would also be involved to oversee it, but we wouldn't necessarily have to pay them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so that's what I was thinking. I was thinking that the only conflict is if we preferential if it was talking about paying, but I think we could reach out to this firm, see if what their name is, and so get all that information.
excuse me, Jason, what is the expected turnaround time on this? What's the timeline?
To the committee, we don't have a timeline, so I would first recommend that you form a work group, similar to what we do with the grants, and come up with a proposal, what the scope of this thing is. You'll have to reach out to the other committee chairs to determine what their interest is, right? So they're forming their work groups. We don't want to have a massive survey. We already have a foundational one that we used over the years, so longitudinal data matters. So we may want to continue at least a portion of that, but we have new needs. So we might be adding some questions. But really, you're going to want to, before you even shop this to other organizations, I would think you would want to at least come up with your core survey. You'd want to talk to some people, right, and engage the chairs to see what exactly we're trying to find when we do the survey. So that's my suggestion for how we start, and you can put a timeline on it in that work group.
And I was just saying, because you wasn't here at the last meeting, I know there was some concern about the previous survey, not the questions, but more so the results, because I think when Ryan went over it, it was like most people hadn't taken it or only one demographic.
So
Is that because that was the survey you went
Yeah,
over with us, right?
Uh,
From last meeting.
Yeah, what the issue was, I'm gonna stand over here. The issue was the fact that we because of our limited resources, we couldn't truly do like a good like randomized survey that they were able to pay for the first few times. Because we had a limited budget, and during the first two biennial surveys, I think they had upwards of $100,000. Don't quote that exact figure, but around that money to do each survey. And the city was not, they wouldn't even let us send out flyers with their mailers. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. No, you're fine. I'm sorry. No, I know that part. We were talking about the results, like when you went over, we were worried about how it didn't capture more of Cleveland.
Unfortunately, whenever you do sort of a sort of convenience sample survey, you're going to get people who are disproportionately white, disproportionately wealthy, disproportionately educated, disproportionately older, which is not who we're trying to target. So that was one of the big drawbacks. We're kind of like, we're kind of limited with what we can say with this data because, we're just limited in that scope because we couldn't, because because the people who it costs a lot of money to get to, those are the people who we want to get to.
That's where me and Kate had said at the previous meeting. I'm just trying to catch Jason up about where at our two alma maters in particular, we know we could get a more robust sample size. And then I mentioned in this group and in the one of the other work groups of us like using every action, that tool, because that tool has a larger demographic. If we can set up a meeting, see how much it costs for us to get access to it. So that was why we wanted to redo the survey. And I think, Kate, you had some thoughts about that too?
I did, thank you. I think the other thing is, this was correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think the survey was either taken verbally or on paper. Is that right? The prior survey?
To the committee, it was, you could take it on paper, and there was also digitally distributed in SurveyMonkey. So one or the other, you can even be through assistants in the office take it. So there were multiple avenues to take it.
So what we were talking about last time was sort of the response rate and efficacy of that. And so we'll have to just weigh the pros and cons of this as a committee. But if you want to do a combination of phone and web-based surveys, that's your best option to get the best sample size, right? To get the best and most accurate sample size, which is what we were talking about. However, in order to do that, that usually costs money, but it doesn't cost necessarily as much money as you might think it does. So I think this would be probably a better conversation to continue in the work group. But what the committee overall will have to weigh is, do we want to use the free option, which we may not be able to access the best sample size, or do we want to go through the RFP process and do a paid option where we would be able to access a more accurate sample size and then also have some advisement on content questions and things like that? Because what a polling firm will do for you is you could say, okay, here's what I want to know, right? Here's what we're really concerned about. And a polling firm is able to take those ideas and write questions where you're going to get the most accurate information to what you really want to know.
No, she cannot see me, that's why I said.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Oh. Yes.
I have been continuously answering this annual survey myself. That's because I can come here to get a copy if no other ways to do it. I would recommend having a RFP process would not be very helpful. That's because a lot of the community members are either under digital divide or they are not, when they hear it's something related to police government, lots of people already get turned off. The better way, I would say, we should adjust the
You have other business, that battery's Fritzy.
The better way to do it is, it's better we make the time slightly longer. So we can actually go to lots of the community meetings to physically distribute these surveys, the paper version. The paper version, unfortunately, it may not sound modernized version, the way of doing it, but lots of time it's still the best way to do it. So if we can take a little bit longer period of time to accept surveys that actually will give us time, even commissioners yourselves or lots of the community groups can actually help out. So we may get a bigger sample size in order to have a better study to avoid the past drawbacks. Thank you.
Thank you. I know if we utilize like the college or like the Every Action tool, we could also have canvassers that go door to door. Because like the college there, so even if we did RFP, not like so advanced that we didn't do anything with like paper, but we could actually get more help and more resources to help us to have people like go out and canvas. Because like when Every Action, when you integrate stuff with them, it gives you a printout of where everybody lives in your neighborhood. It tells you like if they voted last time they voted. Like it gives all the it's the tool that most nonprofits use when they do canvassing. So that's why I was thinking of that because that might help us with that.
Now, well, you've triggered a thought now. Thank you for saying that. I wonder if it would be a good idea for this committee to consider doing a deep listening canvas campaign, which may or may not be a good fit for the annual survey, right? It could be something that's part of a survey, or it could be something that's separate. But I think that the community organizations that have been really successful in this community have done some deep canvassing, right? It's the way that community organizations get big wins. And I think it might be a really great opportunity for us to hear directly from the community, have meaningful conversations, and also kind of introduce what we do to people. So not necessarily something that we have to talk about now or the next meeting, but I just think it's something worth mentioning.
Definitely worth discussion.
Yes, I would suggest that perhaps what the committee could do is develop your framework for how you want to do that, and then make sure that you do a work group, bringing the public into it, but have something for them to be able to respond to and discuss before that first meeting. I think a couple of the suggestions that have been made are good suggestions, but I think that this is one of those work groups that's sorely needed in order to get the responses that you want, from a survey. I remember that we worked with Dr. Rhonda's sociology class at Case, and they did their surveys from food pantries. And when we were running 100 and some people 3 days a week, they had a good sampling, and they came from across the city. And so they did that over a period of a month. And so they hit different people every time. But I think that this is an area where the community's input is critical, and that work group can involve people who have actually done surveys before, but you should develop the framework for it and something that that work group can respond to when first they meet. I just wanted to share that piece.
Ooh, I'm just gonna ask you to hold, we forgot to put community comment on there, but we will have one at the end, we always do, so.
So I'm thinking, would you guys want to, do you think we should, I think maybe forming the work group now would be best. So,
Work group for,
the annual survey on community policing elections.
yeah.
Okay, so, if we do a motion, is it a motion
Yeah,
necessary?
I think you could do motion because if I'm chair, I don't think I can do the
Yeah,
motion.
okay, so, I would like to, put a motion on the table to form, for, the outreach committee to form a work group to work on the CPC's annual survey on community police interactions. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion?
I think you just take the vote.
Is there anyone, oh, yeah, so,
Commissioner Sharina Zayed,
aye.
Commissioner Gregory Reeves.
Aye.
Commissioner Kate Kennedy.
Aye.
And Commissioner Lana Gary Ferguson, aye. Who wants to lead this one? That makes sense, because you have,
Yes,
like, you, yeah.
I was the assistant director for the Community Research Institute at Baldwin Wallace, and we did surveys on the local level, state, and also regional with a Great Lakes survey. So we've done paper surveys, web surveys, phone surveys, you name it. So I'd be happy to lead this work group. I'm really excited about it. Thank you.
And if you need it and you want to work on that, we'd love to have you do that.
Same. I think our next one is CPC staff community engagement strategy.
I'm sorry. I'm gonna sit here for a minute. I hate to sit at this table because I'm just a viewer and listener. But I know Jason has spent time with each of the police committees, kind of describing what that framework could look like. So I would ask you to take a few minutes and look at what you want to put before this work group. So one thing may be the questions, that you want to develop. Another one may be the sampling size. Another one maybe how you're going to reach out to, who are the people that you want on this work group? Are these people who have done surveys before, or if you decide that could be one option. Another one could be some of the students, who might be engaged in delivering that, or canvasser, but I would say develop a quick framework of maybe 4 or 5 things that you want to introduce to this work group, but not just have them come to the table with no ideas about how they move forward. Not that they have to stay with those ideas, but it's a beginning. It's a way to start the discussion and also make sure that work group's actions or interests will be in line with what you're trying to accomplish with this survey. So that, I know Jason spent quite a bit of time with some of the other groups describing that framework. So.
Thank you, Co-Chair Ridgway. I think most people here have heard my speech on the framework. So every work group should just set their objectives, their key measurables, put a timeline to it if they're requesting a budget, and that plugs into a plan for each committee. So that plugs into the outreach committee plan. Some of them will have multiple work groups. So this one is pretty simplistic. You just, what are your survey goals? What do you expect to see? What in a successful survey, that's the measurable outcomes. And then if you need some money. So I think the work group, with the experience it has leading it right now, should have no problem coming up with that in a hurry. So I think Commissioner Kennedy gets it, and we won't have a problem. And as always, a lot of the work groups have been coming in and with staff, and we've just been knocking these out together and to get at least a plan to put forward. Because the biggest thing is we want to present our overall workload to the community so that they can give us feedback if we're going in the right direction or not. So the hope was to have a framework of all the committee work done in early August. We'll put it out to community comment and they could say, hey, we like that you're doing this. No, don't even go there. This doesn't matter to us, whatever. And then we can present it to the world and say for the next 18 months, this is the projects we'll be working on roughly, right? So, and it'll look big and cumbersome and there's only 13 plus our staff, but at least we'll have a roadmap to follow, so.
Would part of that, to the committee chair, would part of that be, identifying, making those connections with the other committees to identify who else wants to give input or who else needs some results from this community survey? Because some of the other committees have mentioned that survey, so you need to know who those other committees are.
Definitely accountability.
So with this, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel with the questions. So we have, part of it is we're missing, continuity matters. So we have the questions that the monitoring team used when they first were doing these, and for some reason they stopped. And we also have the questions that we've used for the last 2 years, right? So you have a huge question bank. It's only going to require a little bit of tweaking, I think. Reinventing it from scratch probably isn't necessary. At this point, a lot of those questions are good research questions, and we'll have some longitudinal data if we ask them again and again, even if it's not the same demographic. I think the monitoring team said at one point that even because it had to do with, if you remember, the uprising at the Justice Center here a couple years ago in 2020, April of 2020, and the monitoring team did a survey secondary to that. And the criticism was, well, you had a very small sample size. And the monitoring team would say, we should listen to every response, regardless of the sample size, right? It all matters. Everyone who takes the time to give feedback matters. So we shouldn't disregard the past surveys. We should find a way to get some continuity so that we have a measurement of where we're trending in this community with satisfaction for our police reform efforts. So.
To the chair, would those survey questions, would those be able to get sent out to us so we can use?
Yeah, Ryan can show you them, and there's considerable data and survey reports from the monitoring team when they did it the last couple of times as well. So all good starting points. But Ryan obviously will be assigned to this work group, and accessible at any time. And the chairs. The interest of the other committees, the chairs are, to guide their policy work to make sure they're putting their compass in the right direction, right? This survey will help with this. So that's what I've talked to them about we have an idea of where we should go, right? But this survey may say we're way off or redirect us, or they might want to ask specific questions about some of the work groups they have, right? To help guide that and inform that work from the community.
Thanks, Jason. Ryan, would you be able to share an Outlook folder with us with some of the information that Jason referenced? And then basically what I'm looking for is like a data dump. So like all the questions you've ever used and all the reports that have ever been made and the public facing and the private facing and any budgets associated with any money that's been spent would be in the past on this type of work would be great too. Thank you.
Do we want to go to the next agenda item?
I did receive word from Kyle. He is actually not available this evening, so he sent in his regrets and carry on.
And I just want to be clear that Alana and Trina, you both want to be on the work group, so it'll be the three of us, right? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Cannot be the three from one committee because then it's a committee meeting. So you have to keep it, every work group that starts from a committee has to only be 2 commissioners assigned to it from that committee. You can bring in a commissioner from another committee as long as it's not 3 seated people from a single committee. Or else you have a quorum and it's just a committee.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Should we decide on it now, or do you want to table it?
Okay.
We could flip flop back and forth one day and one day or the other if you want to.
That's a good idea.
It's up to the two.
So is it that we can be on the work group, we just can't all gather together?
You can't make, so even an email chain with 3 and having a conversation is a meeting by electronic means. So you have to be careful how you do that. I would recommend just, every work group has faced this problem, right? Because there's a tremendous amount of interest in this stuff. You just have to make decisions and trust each other. So,
I don't know, maybe we table it and.
Yeah, we can table it. Definitely. Okay. Thank you.
I see the next item is the CPC staff community engagement strategy. So I think, is this the same thing that Shelley went over with us last meeting?
if you have anything if there's anything new you want to add, or if you want to, I do like the suggestion from, was that Commissioner Kennedy, that said possibly doing a deep listening. So keep that in mind with outreach. You can have targeted meetings around specific topics. You can work with co-chairs or on topics. You can work with chairs of other committees and say, let's do a special meeting for you on a specific topic, right? Just to get some qualitative data from the community in real time about that issue. So, that's an important part of this. So, that being said, the community, we typically have had a written strategy, right, with goals and metrics for community engagement. So if you wanted to have, you can assign that to staff and just say, bring us back a plan for approval. Or again, you can have a work group to work with staff to design for the next 18 months. We're trying to do an 18-month planning period of what outreach will look like over that time with specific projects. The survey being one component of that plan, right? But your broader plan, what audiences do you want to reach? Where do you want to put your time, energy, and efforts? How many meetings do you want to have in a year? Are there any special events you want to do? Those would all be in a master plan to help guide our work. So that's why that's on there. Is they worked on a draft, but it's not an official document until it comes to this committee and is approved. So if you want to continue that work, you can do it via work group and bring it back if you so choose.
I think it's important to start a work group because I know based on the strategy chart we got from Shelley, there were different things that I wanted and I thought we should add to it as far as just being more specific about those community events and hitting specific targets. And I think it'll be really good to do the deep canvassing. So we can do it through work group, we can do it as a committee, but because I know I've sent Shelley like lists of different places and targets and plans just so that we can make sure that we're being as inclusive as possible with community. So however we want to do it, I think as a committee we can decide, but I would be open for it being a work group or us just talking it through with staff.
So we could, the way to do it by committee, if you all want to be a part of it, is we put the draft out there, right? You don't have one email chain discussion, but people can provide individual feedback on that draft, and then we can bring a document in that's refined to the committee to discuss again, right? So everyone would have a chance to touch the document, read the document, provide their feedback on the document as a committee, and then you would bring it back once it's a polished draft for final discussion and adoption as a group. That's if you want to bypass the work group stuff. And that means anyone can come in with Shelley and Sarah. Outreach is broader, right? So there's the digital part and Sarah's in that universe, right? So anyone can come in and make suggestions to the plan individually or in groups of 2 at any time, meet with Sarah and Shelley and refine it. So that's another streamlined way to just get it done quickly.
I think that if we go the work group route, that might be something that's like really good for you to do because you have really good insight on the strategy for that. But I do think that utilizing the staff and us all touching it, kind of speaks to the transparency everybody. So I'm thinking, I think the latter would be best if we just have the staff create the plan and then we all give input and then bring it back to the committee.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
May I ask a question? To the chair, just a question. We're going to be presenting Wednesday night during our meeting. Shelley has prepared a PowerPoint presentation because one of the things that the councilman wanted was for us to introduce ourselves to the community. And I'm not talking about just individually, but what our roles, our responsibilities are, and the connection to the community. And I know that one of the slides that Shelley shared with us last week dealt with the district police meetings. And I know you've been very active, Sharina, in yours, but is this the kind of thing that would also be part of this community engagement strategy, is to making sure that there is some representation at each of these district police meetings as well? I wanted to mention that because when I saw that, the only one I know that we have had regular participation in has been the one that you have been attending. So I wanted to put that on the table as something else that you need to look at when you talk about community engagement.
And to the committee, to the chair, yes, that is already part of the engagement strategy. It was one of the original ideas, but I think we got a little busy with training and everything to have you guys commit time to your home district, and everyone to try and attend those meetings once a month, just to see how they operate and what's happening, But that's an example of, so looking at where do we go and what events do we choose, there's a lot going on. There's only 13 people, and in the future, maybe 1 or 2 community engagement people who are out there at the events, plus, the executive director and assistant director. So there's more meetings than we can possibly attend. So that's where our strategy helps us say, where do we get the most out of this? Like, I think Wednesday, we're going to a ward club meeting and having our meeting at an established audience. That's always been a goal. I'm excited to see how that turns out, because if we can co-locate and cohabitate in these established, meetings in the world, and there's a lot of them, we could touch a lot of people. It's hard to drum up that in our own schedule and time, but there's a lot of people who are dedicated to regular meetings on a regular schedule. And the more we identify in the strategy and say, these are our priorities, we want to try and hit these meetings, we want to be at these meetings, we want to collaborate with these people who have an established audience. That's what this plan is designed to do, right? Is identify everything we know in our heads, every network we can tap into, and then divide our time as best as possible over that 18 months. So that's hopefully what we'll achieve with this, and we'll have something to follow in writing.
I know, Jason, from the last and the first community outreach meeting, we talked about with Shelley was trying to do more of the things that we also lead, and like us tapping into those community spaces and not just always going to those groups, but us like going to the people ourselves, and then us investing in our youth as having like ambassadors as part of the community engagement strategy, because we can't always be there. But if we have youth that are going, or if we're investing in like different community leaders and community liaisons and connecting with them, and so that other people also as well, like bringing it in to be more holistic, where we're not just having like these table strategies. But I know from our last outreach meeting, we did talk about that as being a strategy as well. So I think, do you know a timeline when we could have that strategy email sent out so we can provide feedback?
Yeah, we can send out what we have now. So I'll have it out tomorrow. I'll Shelley resend it, and then we can start the feedback cycle. And if you want to put a goal for when you want to have this thing ready by, so maybe your next month's meeting, give us 30 days on it, and we can maybe have a draft plan for adoption by then. So.
And just to backtrack a little bit for, I guess, when would you want that to start? Because I'm just thinking for our meeting tomorrow, like just based on stuff. Like how much time would you want between now?
For the working group to start, you mean? I mean, I can start it really anytime. I can start it this week, start it next week, but whatever.
Okay, so I'll just put starting within the next week.
Sure.
Okay. And then I think if we're done with those two things, under new business, I was going over our charter, and I know like with the recent increase in violence in the city, there's a lot of conversations around police recruitment and outreach. And I know we just have been so busy with our training and our like development, we haven't talked a lot about it. But I thought like this would be the perfect committee to start that conversation, to see how we can best support and help our law enforcement and our council people with that issue. And the fact that in the charter it says that we do police recruitment, that we can like help and come up with a plan. So I just wanted us to start that conversation about how we would, what are our thoughts about it, or how we want to work towards it, or anything like that.
My question and comment is, I guess for Ryan and Jason, but I'm wondering if there's been any research done by the staff in terms of what other communities have done when they've faced a recruitment crisis, and if there've been any like effective and established strategies that we know that we could sort of look at as we consider our
So to through the chair of the committee, the answer, we have not been involved in the recruitment universe yet. However, 115.5 does make you the quote unquote final authority in examination, recruitment, many elements that they are moving forward with discussing, and we have yet to engage in those conversations or be invited to be engaging in those conversations. So there's also lots of chapters, I think it's 300 through maybe 315 in the consent decree. There are consent decree requirements for recruitment, right? So this isn't just, and the fear is, that because we're in a quote unquote crisis, are we lowering our standards for recruitment, right? It's competitive, right? But the community has come to us, I can tell you experientially, the quality of the candidate we recruit is very important to this community. And there has been some mistakes made in the time of the consent decree that has brought that to the forefront about who are we recruiting, why are we recruiting them? And that's why it's in the consent decree, right, to have standards. And some of the we don't want to lose the integrity part. We don't want to lose the constitutionality of this. We want to make sure that we're recruiting the right people with the right values. And you guys have a huge say in that. In fact, the final authority in maybe some of these areas, so it is something that you need to jump into. On the same side, we don't, since there isn't a policy discussion yet, the idea of helping is a good one. It is a competitive market and those kind of things. So it shouldn't just be an adversarial approach to say, hey, it should also be, how do we help you achieve your goals and also maintain the spirit of the consent decree and the rule of the consent decree and do this right? So I 100% think it should be a joint effort between this committee and policy. The policy chair, this is on the radar just because they're moving forward with policies on this and they're engaging the union in this without, having a conversation. So it's also a policy issue. Are you changing your recruitment policy, or they haven't presented a recruitment plan? They're having a summit with the union, and I don't quite understand the definition of what that means yet. So we have not been invited into that safety summit. It just says key city leaders are going to have a conversation with the unions. Now, could it be a fancy rebranding of union negotiation? Yes. If it's a union negotiation between city lawyers and the unions, right, to change the contract or amend the contract, then legally we don't really have a way to get into that, as far as I know, because those are closed door negotiations. So if they're just branding it a summit, but it's really just a union negotiation, then fine. But if it's a true summit, then I think that the outreach committee, the co-chairs and the other chairs with a stake in this should press to be involved in that conversation and see where we can make an impact on behalf of the citizens.
Yeah, I think that's why I wanted us to just start the conversation here, because I just don't want us, I don't want us to approach it from an adversarial way, because there's so many questions that we just don't have answers to. Like, we don't know the full nature of that. And I know, like, even this past weekend, like, there was a Noble conference, and I was like, oh, we probably should have been a part of the Noble conference or been invited. But even if but maybe there's a way, because we haven't had a lot of interactions with them, that some of us can like do that outreach and reach out to them and say like, hey, we are interested in this and start having those conversations. But I think we probably as a committee and even as a whole group can have it first.
To the chair, I actually met with someone from the police district today, a community engagement officer, and asked that person these very same questions. And so I was given a response. So our academy, I believe we had nine at our academy. Cincinnati had 57. What was the difference between Cincinnati and Cleveland? Well, they pay their officers $90,000 and they have 5 weeks vacation. We pay $75,000 with 2 weeks vacation. That was one of the main things. Like, I mean, I guess there was like a something. I heard there was something going on called like Strongville, the 6th district, because so many of our officers are going there. Even some of their campaigns included previous Cleveland police officers saying how great it is out there compared to here. Because I mean,
Is it pay?
yeah, it's like 92,000 or something.
Even though they're smaller?
So, and another thing is the fact that we do have a consent decree. We do have this commission. That's not very appealing to a police officer. So I think what I expressed is I wanted to meet the officers. I took a tour of the district. I shook hands with officers, asked them what their concerns were, let them know that I am not an advocate, that I want to work with them to figure out what are their needs and how can I help them, because until, you know, we're all on the same team trying to reach, you know, to implement constitutional policing and keep Cleveland safe. I also reached out to a few city council members. I talked to 1 or 2 today, and I reached out to more, awaiting a response on do they think the next move is for a safety plan to reduce the violence. So I think we just need to start reaching out, having the conversations, and bringing it back here to discuss among each other what we can do as a commission to move those things forward.
To the chair, everybody pretty much said what I was about to say, but I just want to say this anyway. We definitely have to strengthen our relationship with the police. I've heard throughout all of these meetings, policemen mentioning like they just think we're just waiting for them to make a mistake, and you know, and not understanding that we're here for the same purpose, to make the city safer. So I think we definitely have to follow your lead and get to more districts, reaching out, having conversations.
I told him that I'm coming back with friends and that.
Yeah.
Yes, I do have to say, yeah.
But that's just like super important to me as a former correction officer. People hated me. They called me the police because I'm in law enforcement. But when they got to know me, actually talk to me, the situation changed. So I want more police. So I'm definitely willing to help with recruitment because we're short, and I live in a tough neighborhood. So y'all beat me to it.
To the chair, I think a couple of things. I think your comment about Noble Conference, I think that's important. If you look at that agenda, it dealt a lot with the issues that we have to deal with, the use of force, CIT training. In fact, I was laughing about this because I was on the agenda to present, and nobody told me. And so my name, yes, and my name was on the table and everything. But we had agreed to present at a conference maybe in 2020, and then they canceled it because of COVID. And I think what they did was just dropped that same schedule into their conference this time. But I talked to Dr. Bartholomew today, right before coming in, about it. And she said, yeah, your name was on the program, your nameplate was on the table. And I feel really badly about that. I think I talked to you about it, Jason. I just happened to be reviewing the agenda. And I said, is that this day in Ridgeway? Because I didn't know. But I do think that there are topics, and I know we haven't budgeted as a member, you know, as CPC being a member of Noble, and I know we're not. Okay, not. But you know, I think it's something that during the next budget cycle we may want to look at, because a lot of their sessions dealt with some of the same topics, and then a lot of their sessions were not being done by police. A lot of them were done by civilians. You know, so to be able to gain that perspective, I think would be good. I
Do you
do,
know the cost, Jen? Because
it's
maybe
expensive. I think the what do you call it? The pre-registration fee was like $500 and some dollars. And I was trying to see, well, if I have to go and present, are they gonna give me this free, since I'm a presenter, or whether, you can register for one day?
for us to just become like a member for the.
For the CPC the organization to become a member, yeah. So, thank you.
I don't need to lose it.
Oh, thank you. I didn't even know I left it there. Thank you. So, but I do think it's worth exploring at the next budget cycle to see if we can, whether we can become a part of that, just like we do NACO. I wanted to say that piece of it. I also wanted to comment on Jason's piece about this summit that's coming up, because I think it would be the first time that we can really test what it means with recruitment, if that's what it is, and not a matter of, and it's not a matter of sort of a pre-union meeting to see what it is. But if they are going to be talking about recruitment, I know Jason, you have been concerned about, when we say it's 400, with 300 or 400 policemen short. I don't know if it's ever been determined what a shortage is.
So when you go back and watch the safety committee meeting, they're basing it on this like census data and this national tracking of per capita, the amount of police that you're supposed to have per capita in a city. I think also in the consent police was prior, there was some conversation with DOJ saying that one of the issues with us with overuse of force was also the fact that we didn't have enough police. But I think they were talking more as far as like the diversity of us having enough police that deals with certain like demographics or something, and so that number got expanded, that we, for the size of our city, did not have enough police. But then we across the country, there are cities who have less police and who have more population than us. But I think they were trying to go off of like this national standard of if you have this many people, it's like per one cop per 5,000 or something per capita in a certain area district. I can send you the like
I
national
would be
thing,
interested in it. Yeah.
Yeah, there's like a national standard of what it is. I think Cleveland wants our leadership, because we say due to crime and because of the consent decree, that we needed more. But then we look at other cities like New York and Chicago, where they have more cops and they have a huge budget, and it's still a lot of crime. So we know it's not the only determining factor. I just thought that because I think it's great, like commissioners, you go and you reach out, but I think like if we can all come up with a plan maybe and start to reach out together, and it's more like transparent and we all do it, maybe then they will feel comfortable like with us, and we can make it as a plan to like 4 or 5 of us, and like since we're discussing it now, and it's great to know that like, oh, you go to those district meetings, we can talk about like who wants to sign up and go to district meetings at different times. And then we can maybe just someone from this committee and policy committee can start reaching out and just ask them a question about that. Because I don't want us to just assume that it's something bad or sinister because we haven't been invited yet, especially since we also have been in our training. Because I know just from looking at the safety committee meetings, that they've been wanting help, and I think that they've been wanting like different solutions and wanting to hear like what ideas and stuff we have. So we just talked about like who wants to reach out or how we want to reach out, and just bring it back to the group as a whole or something. But I can send you that information.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep. So for that meeting, does anyone want to reach out? Do we want to like just reach out as a committee and just ask, like, is there anything we can do to help? Because I think it'll be good coming from commissioners.
To the committee, I'd be happy to work with the co-chairs to come up with a letter, expressing interest in this topic, and start with some questions, around. The other thing you can do is, there are people who are assigned full-time to recruitment in the division. If you want to know more about it, you can invite them to the outreach, right? See what they're doing already. you know, hear, like we've done with other, units, you know, hear what they're working on, what their problems are, what they're doing already. You know, we can get a copy of the consultant RFQ and see what they're doing there. So there's a lot of places we can educate ourselves on the issue of what's already happening. Before you can jump into something, you got to know what's already happening and where they're at, and then you can pick up right where they are.
Have we reached out to anyone at the city to ask more questions about the summit so that we can see?
So yeah, to the chair, yes, I asked some specific questions about who's involved in it, and I got that it was a closed session. But when I asked some follow-up questions, we didn't really get a specific answer regarding that. So I'll send you what the communication was. So the co-chairs are involved in all those communications just to hear, and then if there's something to report back, that's when I usually do that. But right now, there wasn't really anything gleaned from those questions that wasn't already said in the press release about the summit. So
I just would like to make another comment. So thank you, committee chair. One of the things that I will be putting on the table at our next leadership committee, leadership group, I'm hoping that after our meeting each time that we can develop sort of a quick overview of what we have covered and get it out to all the commissioners. Like, we talk about a lot of things. Sometimes it's just under discussion, but no decision. Sometimes we're making decisions. And I think it's important that that information goes out to the full commission. It's just an information of what we have on our table, because people also bring topics to us that the full commission may not know about. So I'm going to be putting that on our table at our next meeting, something fairly informal, but just giving a status report on some of the topics that were covered.
Do we have any more thoughts on that? Like, do we want to talk about if right now any commissioners? Because maybe sometimes sometimes things are received differently when different people reach out. So like maybe if some of us as commissioners can take the lead and decide, like, are there some people we want to reach out to try to find more information? Like, would that be helpful?
I did reach out to community engagement officers in my district and invited them to our meetings. I discussed with Greg reaching out to the community engagement officer in his district and inviting that person out to the meetings. So I think that's a good start.
So we put like do we have their names and stuff?
Yeah.
Just because I think sometimes we have like a list so we can start to formulate a list of like who are all the community engagement officers in each ward. There's a lot of wards and everybody from each ward is on.
I could send that in an email.
Okay, I think that'd be cool because I think it'll also be like if some of us on the committee can like decide like are there 2 or 3 words that we can take and say like, hey, these are 2 or 3 words that I can.
So to the chair, to the commissioner, yes, it's the public safety recruitment unit, so it comprises of fire, police, and EMS, and they have people detailed to that unit from and it used to be a sergeant level police officer that works in recruitment. So I will find out currently who is detailed to that from the police, and I can connect them with whoever we want to be the point person for this kind of thing.
I'm thinking if we do something like how I just want to like making sure there's 17 different wards. So if we're doing it like I can take 3 wards and like these are like the 3 and like commissioner.
There's 5 districts.
Yeah. We're just making sure like we're hitting all the targets of because we might not all live in too spread out of those districts, but just I think the more we talk about and put a name to it, I'm third.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we're both third. I mean, I just think maybe we should start right. So yeah, you're 4th, right? We could just start with like see where the commissioners meet.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like if we can create like a spreadsheet and stuff because I think that'll be helpful.
And I'll step in
for accountability.
And include the co-chairs too.
So that's so I want us to have like a document. I'm thinking of like these are all the like district meetings and like who lives.
There's actually, there's already a listing of where's all, like, the days and times in the district.
Yes.
Who's the officer, there's already a list they have. Like,
Yes, so I mean, if we can start assigning each other to it, I think that'll be helpful, because I think right now, like, we all know that list exists, but we don't have anything internal of like, okay, so who all lives in third? Can you guys rotate and make sure there's one? Who all lives in the 5th district, so you all can rotate? And now we see like, oh, nobody lives in District 1, so who can cover that sometime? So I think if we have it like in writing, like, or like on a spreadsheet or a chart, it can be easier for good accountability. The co-chairs can easily see who's attending. Yeah, so we know theirs, but if we have a spreadsheet that then plugs us in, and we can decide who takes what months, because you might not be able to go to all, or I might not be able to go to all, but if I know you're going to the one in September, I can take the one in October. I think if we could do that for the whole commission, that might be really helpful. And then even with stuff like this, but I think it's great, Jason, that you reach out to the city, and maybe sometimes, like, if they're not responding to you, maybe like co-chairs, or they're not responding to co-chairs, maybe there's another commissioner that can reach, but like, if we all work together sometimes to reach out to people, if we're aware that those things have happened, that way when we come to this meeting, we'll have more to talk about, because we'll be able to say, oh, well, they actually said we could come and do a presentation or something. So I just think, like, if we want to just kind of put a plan together or volunteer, like, with some of the topics and some of the things in the city, what are some things that we know, even on our schedule now, that we can volunteer to reach out to, go to? Like, I can email the one group and ask them a question to see if they'll be open. But I think we can start like having those right? Like, that might help.
I think none of your voices got really through speaker. That means probably not fully captured by the microphone.
Are they using their mics?
Yeah, it's
My mic is
probably
on.
yeah, it could
It's
be.
really low. You don't hear any of the voices from the speaker. That means
That,
probably not fully captured.
that's. So the way it works is if someone's making a lot of noise and they're not right by a microphone, the microphone doesn't pick it up, and that mic only picks up what that really only picks up what that guy's saying.
Ugh.
Yeah, it's probably coming through, but it always helps to move it forward. So
Yeah.
but
I can repeat that, but I was just saying,
we can hear you.
Okay. I was just saying, like, maybe if we can work together to create a spreadsheet of some kind that we all start to volunteer and put our names of who can reach out to who, because I think there's a lot of work and being done and a lot of conversations being had, but if we all can also help to say, I'll follow up. So if Jason reaches out to someone in the city and they don't answer, who's the person who has the capacity that they can follow up to try to get more information? Or if someone else is like, hey, I can tackle this event, I'll reach out, get information, and then bring it back to the whole group, but we can start putting it on writing. And so even when we're at full commission meetings, we'll have something to present on that shows, well, actually, this is how we deal with these meetings, and this is how we communicate with these agencies in the city. So I was thinking if we can start to just, even right now, just talk about like, what are the things that we feel we have the capacity to reach out to and work with and communicate with the co-chairs, in case something falls by the wayside, they will also be in the know, and they can also let us know as well.
and if I could just take a moment and just remember, if you're communicating with city officials and you're planning something or asking for something, just please CC me. So, because sometimes I get calls and then I'm like, I wasn't even aware of that. So it just is helpful that I know what's going on. So informal conversations like you had with Recruit, fine. But if you're asking for something, or if you're asking for them to meet, and do a presentation, like, just loop me in on that so that I'm at least aware. It doesn't mean I have to be involved. It just means that if I get a call from that person's boss, or whatever, and says, hey, do you know anything about this? At least it sounds like we're coordinating our efforts and staying informed and keeping each other in the loop. So.
So I can start by sending an email out with a spreadsheet of those meetings to all commissioners and
asking like who lives in what district, and then does anyone, I don't know, Commissioner Ridgway, have you reached out to the Safety Summit people since Jason has reached out?
No, because we we pushed him up. But he has reached out to them. They have given a response. And I think the last time, they were pretty adamant at the beginning that this was sort of a closed meeting. But then the second time, they kind of wavered a little bit. So we're not sure that we will have any input again. And I think it was suggested that if nothing else, maybe we could see the results of that and respond to the results as worst case.
Do you think it'd be helpful if one of the commissioners reached out and just asked questions and just tried to see if we could attend or anything, like if one or two of the commissioners? Would that be helpful?
To the chair, I think there should be a formal request to the mayor to, through the co-chairs, to have commission representation there, considering the scope of it falls in the scope of the commission's work, right? So we haven't made a formal request.
Okay.
So that is an important part of the procedure, right? So we can have backdoor conversations and emails, but until you make a formal request, they're not forced to, acknowledge that in one way or the other.
So I guess that's what I'm asking. Because I didn't know that was even an option. So I'm guessing, can we?
We're going to do that. We're going to develop a letter.
Okay.
And send it as a formal request.
Okay.
We'll do that.
Okay. And I know you mentioned, do you think there's any way we can do some research about Noble to see if there's a possibility that we can join this year, even if it's at an abbreviated cost, or even if some of us are willing to pay out of pocket or something? Like, if I'm just trying to think of like this solution, because it is so late in the season. If I don't mind doing that research to look into it to see if it's a possibility.
Yes, I think it's definitely worth exploring it. I do think that one of the places that would be beneficial would be the conferences themselves, because of the kind of topic they had. Like, what's been close to 8 or 10 page agenda on what they were covering, and an awful lot of it dealt with the same issues that we're dealing with. So I really think we could benefit from conference participation, not the whole commission, but definitely those who could see some interest in the work that they are doing, either in committee, or specific tasks tied into the commission. But I would suggest that we look at that for the next budget cycle. We'll be starting on that soon, and we could throw in that, that membership that would allow us to attend. I definitely think it's worth attending. Yeah. I would say let's look at it for a membership for next year.
Okay, because I was thinking, like, if we can look at it for next year and just get different costs and see different tiers. And I don't mind doing that research. And sometimes just asking, like, are there any discounts for like community organizations? Because sometimes those big organizations will give community organizations a little bit of a discount. Because I know sometimes it can be a lot of money. But looking at it for next year, so we'll know.
And I understand that when it was in Cleveland this year, it came back. When it was canceled out during COVID, it was to have been in Cleveland, but they brought it back to Cleveland this time. They did it virtually last year, and they brought it back to Cleveland this time with the similar or same agenda that they had when it was canceled out before. But I just think as much as we can get involved in, as commissioners that deal with police reform, some of the same topics that we are, we are charged with looking at. I think that's to our benefit as a commission. Like, I'm going to be in a 40-hour session on CIT training with police cadets in October for a full week. I'm going to take it right along with them. I've been approved for it, and that will give me a good understanding of how they perform and what the expectations are, as far as training and policies and procedures. So I'm really excited about that. But if there are other opportunities like that, I think we should get engaged.
Are those types of opportunities open to all of us? And how can we, if other commissioners are interested, can they sign up for those type of trainings like you're doing?
So, to the committee, yes, that invite to do CIT went out to everybody very early on. So commissioners had a time frame to request signing up. So, I think there were 2 or 3 commissioners who signed up for that. I'd have to go back and look, but, as the opportunities arise, we send it out to everybody, with a sign in. So right now that was the only one that was offered. And that opportunity has closed because they needed to know in advance how many people were going to attend. So just keep an eye on the emails. That's where that would come or it would be presented at one of our meetings during either from one of the police officers inviting you or from when I give the executive briefings.
Is there anything else? Do we want to come back to the thing of the chair for this committee, or do we want to just table that to next meeting?
What do you think?
I don't know. Do I speak it? Anybody want?
You can do it. One uneven number, like,
Microphone,
wait.
please.
I know I'm just, I don't know. Just throwing thoughts out there. Not really
I think what the commissioner's saying is there's 4 of you, so we don't have a tiebreaker in our
Right.
rules. However, it just means you would have to bring it back, redebate it until you break the tie or you decide to table it. So, that's our procedure right now. We don't have a tiebreaker procedure for a board.
Maybe we should go for it, if we need a tiebreaker, we can table it.
There you go.
Okay, well, I am interested in being the chair of this committee. So, I currently, I feel like that I have the passion and experience to be successful in this role. Currently with the job that I have, I work every day on the ground in the community. I work in Ward 5, which is has the highest crime rate in the city. I work very closely with residents. They trust me. I've already began reaching out to officers to begin to build relationships and a rapport to bridge the gap between the commission, the community, and officers. I feel like I'm doing a very good job with that. I will continue to do it on a greater level and also kind of tie in the commission with that. Like a lot of the plans that we discussed today were already on my agenda. And my plans were, once I become chair, to just implement engagement strategies with outreach committees so we can move forward and create change and strategy to ensure constitutional policing in Cleveland. So I think I'll do a good job, and yeah, so throw my head out there.
I also would like to be chair of this committee, I think, because with my years of experience as being a community organizer for the city and the state in different capacities with different organizations, it's given me a unique perspective in how really to just implement different community engagement strategies and also get to meet people from all walks of life and all parts of Cleveland to make sure that they will feel heard and be a part of this, like our work groups, and help us move our work forward. And I think just some of my previous experience with being a part of CPOP and having like the understanding of like the close relationship that this outreach committee has with other organizations and other outcomes in our consent decree. I think that I just have the unique skill set of both the policy part of it, but also that on the ground, hands-on experience, and just implementation experience of what is the type of technology and tools that we need to move our work forward. I think I've taken a chance to be taking a leap in leadership of like trying to make sure that we have meetings and planning those, and also looking at other technology and resources that can make our work move forward better and make sure everything's transparent. So yeah, I also like to throw my hat in there.
Do we have to make a motion, or are y'all just the candidates? Are you throwing your hat there? Okay.
So if you want to be formal, you can nominate yourself. If each of you get a second, then we can take the vote. Or knowing what you know now, if you want to wait for a fifth, since you have 2 candidates, and give you some time. So those are your options, right? So
I say let's go now, and if we have to table it, we'll table it. Or push forward till we have that.
So if you both introduce nomination and then get a second, then you can proceed with the vote.
I would like to make a motion to nominate myself as the chair of the outreach committee.
I second.
And I would also like to make the motion to nominate myself as chair of the outreach committee. I guess we call it the vote.
Are we having like the little voting thing?
It's such a small group, you can each say you can go around roll call and just say who you vote for. I mean, if we write it down, you still have to say who you are and who you voted for, so it's just a formality. Unless there's a dispute to doing it, just open publicly and want a preference to write it down, we can just do that with this small group roll call.
I don't know. Can I do the roll call? If I'm also the I don't know. Can I do that? Okay.
Yeah.
Call yourself.
Okay. Commissioner Gifford, I vote for myself. Commissioner Kate Kennedy,
I vote for Sharina.
Commissioner Gregory Reese,
I vote for Commissioner Zai.
and Commissioner Zai.
I would like to vote for myself.
So for the record, it is for Commissioner Zaid, 3 votes, and for Lana Garrett Ferguson, 1 vote.
Thank you very much. I'll work really hard with all of you to get the job done.
And to the chair, I forgot to add it to the agenda. It's my fault, but we should have a public comment period at the end. We've been doing that at the end of each one. So if you have no new business, that would be the last item before you adjourn.
Public comment?
You go first. I gotta find something.
Are you ready for that now? Should I?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah. Oh,
okay,
yeah. Sorry.
okay.
Public comment. I guess that's public comment. That shouldn't be done.
Here you go.
Why don't we allow you to come up to this mic because it's the best mic here?
Go on with that, so.
All right, sorry, Lou again. Based on our meeting today, I have certain things I would like to address here. Number 1, the location of having the survey. First of all, I already mentioned earlier, I wish we can have a little bit longer period of time to actually collecting survey. That's one thing. I would suggest certain locations definitely is good for you to even leave paper copies or having constant help. All the city libraries, for example, some of them do have longer hours. The one outside of downtown, they open even on Saturday and Sunday, some of them. So leaving copies there, let the librarian know they can assist. That would be a good thing to do because we do have a good population utilizing library. And there are other similar places. It will be good for you to leave a survey there, the paper copies too. Sure, we can encourage people to all get answer online, but no guarantee this can apply to 100% of our population. So having paper copy at every place is possible. Let them feel that they can have their free will to answer it without any interference. That would be a good thing. Now, some of people, they do need a nudge. So when you have that good idea to go into all those community meeting events, that's the way we can put the nudge onto people to encourage them to do that. In the environment, the settings, they are already familiar and comfortable with. However, for a committee like this to establish another work group while you don't have multiple issues you have to deal at the same time, I don't think that's a wise use of your manpower and logistics. So this committee itself should be the one doing it. In that case, people can see that when you come every time in the meeting, you have a report, you do the updates, you follow up, they can see your effort. this is better than having another work group. Their meetings may not be public. Then people would not really see you are working for them. So this is one thing. Transparency is the key. The other part is about recruitment. I think some of you, when you got interviewed, they will probably already ask you about discipline issues. Please understand, people nowadays started learning. Most of the cases for officer to get disciplined are the younger ones for something trivial. Throughout the lots of the trainings I have attended with all of you, we actually know that the bigger issues, those people have never been put into cases to discipline, to encounter any disciplinary scenarios. For example, their sexual misconduct. Instead of missing the deadline, sending in a report just for 2 hours. Lots of the young officers, the new officers, are getting penalized by these things too much. This is a part of the reason why we keep losing police officers. So for you guys to do this job, please do not fall into the propaganda or the politics trap. Those are traps. You should actually start promoting something to alleviate, put on heavy burdens on police unnecessary. Should police go to answer calls actually is a mental health crisis. They are not trained for that. They are not psychologists, they are not family therapists, they are not any of those. They are trained for armed robberies. They are trained for dealing with terrorists. So you probably can start promoting the idea about full-scale care response. So in that case, you can actually bust the myth that we need lots of police officers. No, we don't. We need a police officer in certain numbers, but in higher quality to serve the city. But their time has been diluted to go to do lots of things they are not trained for. And now these newer officers are put on the blame most of the time. This is a big problem with the workforce issue. We recruit them, but we lose them quickly. On the other hand, the ones still sitting in those offices for years, they are sometimes the one putting the pressure on these new ones to follow their old ways of doing things. Police reform is about culture change, not to just punish the newer officers about the mistakes that which are not really the 100 or 200 years of the wrongdoing by the system, by design. So please don't fall on the trap. Just because they say we don't have enough number of police, we can give lots of reasons that that particular number is a question to begin with. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Rosie Pelfy. I wanted to commend you all for the good ideas, innovative ideas that I heard. I was listening on my way here. I just want to remind everybody the City of Cleveland Mental Health Response Advisory Committee exists, and it would be good to partner with them. They haven't done a survey since 2016. And when we did a survey, myself and somebody from Frontline Service, who is a committee member, we realized that we were having town hall meetings, and as Lou mentioned, the digital divide, that individuals experiencing homelessness may have trouble accessing a electronic survey. So we made appointments. We went to the men's shelter, the women's shelter, Y Haven, the crisis unit on the west side, they call it the CSU, Crisis Stabilization Unit, And, we sat down with people and we didn't just give them the surveys because we were having town hall meetings. We asked them the questions and, wrote down, we had two people, one took notes, the other one was kind of facilitating. And I think we got a lot of valuable feedback that way. So I just wanted to mention that. And I also, because it was not in the scope of the previous commission's duties, they never did ask any questions about crisis intervention. Interim Director Goodrick can correct me if I'm wrong, but that there were never any, the CPC did not do any, ask any mental health related questions to the best of my knowledge in the past with these surveys. Because it was not in their scope of, it wasn't in the scope of their duties in the consent decree, right? Because the Mental Health Response Advisory Committee was supposed to do that. So I just wanted to point that out. But every time they did a survey, whether it was with officers or the public, there were always responses about vulnerable populations, including homelessness, and the staff, to their credit, always included these comments in their report. So I just hope that you guys, it's been in a silo for years, and hopefully you remember to include that. So I looked at the agenda for this week's meeting, Wednesday's meeting, and I think outreach starts with listening to the community in meetings, and it's kind of easy to maybe forget that something was said or promised in a meeting, but at the meeting in June, because it ended early, it was said that at the next meeting, they would start with public comment. And I understand why it was logistically, you couldn't do that with the last meeting, the special meeting. But, the elephant in the room here is the letter from the mayor, okay? That came out on Thursday. And this is bigger first of all, I'm extremely upset about this letter. There's so many upsetting things in here. And it's bigger than Mr. Goodrick. The thing is, the community wants to know. This isn't just about who is or isn't going to be your executive director. The mayor insulted you in this letter, in my opinion. The community wants to know. When you look, with all due respect to Chair Ridgway, when you look at the agenda, I'm not saying that you're not planning to address this. Maybe you are in your chair's report, but because it's so bare bones, the community members think, oh, they're just going to gloss over this and make it sound like everything's okay. I don't have to bother coming to the meeting or whatever. And so it's a perception, right? It doesn't, I was trying to explain a few things to people about, they were upset about some things that happened at the last meeting. And I was trying to explain, well, this is why they did this. This is why they did that. And they're like, oh, that makes sense, but I didn't know. A lot of people aren't familiar with Robert's rules. They've never served on a nonprofit board or a government board. And, one of the things in this letter is, there's something in here that says that you all haven't made something about significant progress. And it was insulting, okay? You guys have worked your rear ends off. I don't agree with all of your stances on things, but nobody can touch the work that you put into this. There's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes that we're not even aware of. I know that people, especially the co-chairs, So, I believe I heard somebody say 55 hours of training that you all have had. It's truly impressive, honestly, the work that you guys have done. And so, my question is, okay, how do you measure what is quote unquote significant progress? People want to know that. And so they want to know, this is an independent body. They want to have confidence, especially because almost 60% of the residents who voted for this issue 24. In here it says issue 24 provided a clean slate for the CPC. I didn't see that language in there anyway. And I want to point out, I was looking at the website last night, or actually no, it was at the YouTube page, and there is a meeting on there. I believe it was September 2019. It was the Police Commission appreciation night. the judge came, Judge Solomon Oliver and other city officials. They were giving out certificates, or I think it was resolutions, acknowledging the time, because the first group of commissioners had finished their time. And I was there, and I was with a table of people, and one of them was Miss Brenda Pickerstaff. And we all stood up and said how valuable the commission was and how we wanted to see it become permanent, right? And that was due to Mr. Goodrick's leadership and the staff. So what this started about was just making the police commission permanent. One of the reasons why people stopped coming to meetings was because they'd ask questions and the city never responded. So the board commissioners, the co-chairs, would send these questions to the city, not get a response back. People would come to the meetings and yell at the co-chairs when it wasn't their fault. You know what I'm saying? So records requests put in, get denied. I mean, there were all these things that happened. And what's really frustrating is to have been involved in this for almost 8 years, okay? And to see a lot of people serving on this commission that I didn't see in meetings. It doesn't mean that you were not involved in other ways in police reform that I wasn't aware of, because there's a lot of other areas, your involvement with churches and things like that, with community meetings and everything. But it's really, really frustrating to have been doing this for 8 years and see a track record of success. And, the other thing I want to point out is the fact that when you read the language I'm sure people have brought this up, when you read the language in the charter, it says that the commission will nominate an executive director, singular. And it says the mayor will appoint the executive director. Nowhere does it say that you're going to submit a list of 2 or 3 executive directors, plural. Yeah, I mean, so the thing is, people are very upset about this. And again, it's I'm not trying to discount Jason, because people are very upset about that portion of it, but they feel like your independence is being impeded upon, that this is just a sign of what's to come about your independence, what the city is going to do. Like you guys, the public is saying they definitely need a lawyer now, and things like that. And so I just in internal conflicts. There's been a bit of messiness from the beginning, but I don't think you can blame it on staff. And what really also upset me is saying that there was a loss of confidence. If you worked here, if you were Shelley, Sarah, or Ryan, I can't speak for any of them, how would you feel when you saw this? Do the commissioners have faith in their interim executive director and the staff? That's what the community wants to know. And I'm not trying to put anybody on the spot, but I know there's things that happen behind the scenes, but why should I take a survey, right? Why should I come to a meeting if you're not even going to address this abomination, on the meeting agenda? And so it's perception. It's just one opinion. I've talked to other people, and the biggest thing is, they talk about promises. The mayor promised to do a national search for a new police chief. And so, I mean, crime is an unprecedented level, violent crime. People want to know why there needs to be a more rigorous selection process to choose an executive director for the police commission. And the mayor's saying he has confidence in your ability after, what happened in June, but yet he doesn't have confidence in your ability to select an executive director. So I just, I know people aren't going to agree with me, but I just hope that they will understand that there are a lot of things in this letter that are very concerning. Thank you.
May I speak again?
Can you make it like
Yeah,
in a
quick.
minute, 1 minute?
Sorry, I was long-winded.
sorry to make the second talk. This is the reason why in the special meeting I mentioned lots of you should leave so it will not go extra ugly. That's because not only this time, they will not let you do things independently based on the charter itself. Some of you were selected because they knew you would not understand the politics they are playing. So you will be trapped. And you will do the things to make the community think that you are not doing the job. You have your heart on it, but you did not know the bigger picture. They deliberately not let you know. As Rosie Pelby points out, this particular letter is one of the evidences. And we have been watching this since 2015. So we know it will be good for you to be in other positions instead of here. Because this table, the people sitting on this table, you have to really know how ugly that politics is. They do not want this commission to have a successful path to actually do the police reform. Same thing with other entities established by the consent decree. This is the reason why none of the entities created by consent decree now, none of them is fully functional. Mostly dysfunctional. And this will drag us longer in the consent decree. And even they put on a new trick, try to force us out of the consent decree without the true, meaningful police reform. Actually, our police officers, they need that. Otherwise, how would they dare to come to take this kind of job, which has predictable, unpredicted life and death situation involved? This is the reason why lots of young people in your previous public meeting, two representatives from Black Shield and the other one, the Latino police unions, they all say that younger people, they are not interested because they see what happened in the community. They do not know the politics yet, but that's already enough to discourage them. So it's up to you guys to do the smart thing, to do the right thing. If you cannot handle this situation, leave before it goes ugly, because your effort can put it from the other side to help. This is very important because we are short in the time and we are racing with the time we don't have. Thank you.
All right. Is there any closing thoughts?
Any closing thoughts from commissioners?
Yeah, do you guys want to discuss, maybe we should start discussing regular meeting dates and times for our committee? And, that could be done now.
Can we stick with Mondays?
Oh, Mondays are good for me.
Mondays are good for me too.
Okay. All right.
Mondays is 6.
Okay, so how often do you guys want to, maybe every other,
Probably more frequent starting now.
so maybe every Monday for like maybe, no, yeah, I'll say every other.
Other, every other
Yeah.
is fine.
Okay, I'll say every other.
Every other is fine.
So like, for example, I can't do next Monday, but I could do,
The Monday after. Perfect.
Yeah.
Every other. Okay.
Every other. So the next meeting is going to be set for,
What's the date?
I'm going to pull it up.
August 7th,
August 7th.
Monday, August 7th, 6 p.m., probably here. Looking forward to talking more about outreach topics, surveys, and more. Thank you.
Great work.
Oh, and I guess adjourn?
Second.
Second. 7:50.
Third.
All right.